What's the secret?
You know, everyone asks me, no, everyone asks me that all the time, and the truth is, what big move did it, you know, put us over the top or whatever? And I always say the same thing. It's every little thing. It's not one big thing. It's every little thing. Attention to detail and trying to be great every day. The entire organization, not just the basketball team, the business organization, everything.
The Golden State Warriors. A peculiar case in multiple ways. The face of the franchise being a pretty much normal guy, a player who can play legitimately any position from 1 to 5, and of course, the 3-1 lead. For the past few years, this team has dominated the NBA with their superior ball movement and selfless style of play. In 2015, they became NBA champions, and in 2016, they broke the record for the amount of wins in the regular season. And in 2017, they are NBA champs once again after acquiring one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. Now, we know all of this as it's common knowledge for anyone who's even just dabbled in the world of basketball. But many people don't know how this beast came to be. If you're one of those people, this video is for you. Alright, let's get started. In order to understand fully, we have to take it back to 2009. At this point in time, the Warriors were a terrible team for years on end. They were so bad that you could even consider the Kings, yes, those Kings, to be more successful than they were. After the 90s with the Run TMC squad consisting of Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin, the Warriors fell off bad. After the 1994 season, they didn't make it to the playoffs for 12 straight years. For that span of time, they were the only team that couldn't make the playoffs at least once. They were able to squeak by as an 8th seed in 2007, and actually eliminated the number 1 seed Mavericks. But then they were dispatched in 5 games against Carlos Boozer and the Utah Jazz. The next year they still almost won 50 games, but it wasn't enough to make it in the competitive Western Conference. After that they fell off again and had a 29-53 season. However, even though the Warriors had a terrible record, it didn't truly show the full capabilities of the team. 5 out of the 8 top guys missed at least 20 games, with Monte Ellis, yeah, he played for the Warriors, one of their top scorers, missing 57. Not to mention, they were the youngest team in the league, so they could only get better from there. The future was bright for the Warriors, but no one ever thought that it would turn out the way that it did. Honestly, everything that happened was just a product of luck. Their first bid came on draft day, 2009. The Warriors had the 7th pick and coach Don Nelson had only one player in mind, Wardell Stephen Curry II. However, the Minnesota Timberwolves were in need of a point guard and had 2 picks in front of them. So there was tension in Golden State until they chose Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn with their 2 picks. That was the Warriors' first taste of greatness in a long time, and more was to come. You see, the main problem with the Golden State Warriors was a combination of 2 things: bad luck and terrible ownership. Chris Cohen took over ownership of the Warriors in 1995 and proceeded to make every Bay Area fan hate him with a passion. To put it simply, Chris Cohen was the Kings owner before the Kings owner was the Kings owner. But anyways, Mr. Cohen went along and drafted multiple busts and basically ignored Chris Webber's plea to fire their coach and traded him, and then proceeded to fire the coach 4 months later. So after ruling a franchise for about 15 seasons, Cohen put the Warriors up for sale. Enter Joe Lacob and Peter Guber. These 2 names are unfamiliar to most outside the loyal Warriors fan base, but they are one of the sole reasons as to why the Warriors are where they're at today. Joe was a minority owner for the Boston Celtics and a successful venture capitalist, while Peter is a CEO of some company named Mandalay Entertainment. They worked in 2 different fields, but they both had something in common: they loved basketball. Not only that, they saw the opportunities that owning a basketball team would give them. With those 2 reasons being a driving factor, they bought the Golden State Warriors for $450 million, a record-setting amount at the time. On November 15, 2010, the 2 new owners for the Warriors were introduced to the arena, where Joe Lacob said,
"If you look up there, that is a very lonely flag. We want another one."
However, in order to achieve that, Lacob and Guber had their work cut out for them. The Warriors were what the Kings are now, a team with no direction. But they had a few bright spots on the roster, one being a 6'3" rookie point guard who averaged 17.5 points a game in a Rookie of the Year campaign. While Steph Curry didn't win it, he still showed lots of promise with Don Nelson's run and gun offense. Even with that, there was conflict within the team. Throughout the season, Monte Ellis, the team's leading scorer with 25 a game, often fought with Don Nelson. By drafting Curry, the relationship was strained, as Monte and Curry are 2 very similar players. They're both small scoring guards that can't play defense. Since they were the starters for the team and were surrounded by NBA journeymen, they ended up with a 26-56 record and were the worst defensive team in the league, despite being the second best in offense. It was at that time when Lacob and Goober went to work. The first act of business was to land David Lee for a bunch of role players and 2 second-round picks from the Knicks. The Warriors the season before were dead last in rebounding, and David Lee was a guy who could get 20 and 10 any given night. Then they signed some other guys like Jeremy Lin and CJ Watson to fill out the roster. But the major move that affected the Warriors the most in the long run is the firing of Don Nelson. Despite Nelson holding the record for the most wins as a coach in NBA history, Lacob preferred to have a young, up-and-coming coach for his eventual masterpiece. He was replaced with assistant coach Keith Smart, who continued to coach on for the next season. It was around this time when the Warriors ran into a rare instance in their organization for the past few years. They drafted a bust. Now, it wasn't on the level of Anthony Bennett or Johnny Flynn or anything like that, but Ekpe Udoh with a 6th pick in the 2010 NBA draft wasn't the best idea, especially with Paul George and Gordon Hayward still remaining on the draft board. However, this was a blessing in disguise. Even with the addition of David Lee, the Warriors only went 36-46, as their offense suffered without the guidance of Don Nelson, and with their defense only getting slightly better, even with Udoh filling his role as a defensive specialist. This gave the Warriors the 11th pick in the 2011 draft. Oh, and before the draft happened, the Warriors sorta hired Jerry West to be a consultant for the team. Lacob was interested in gaining insight from such a storied man, as West had led the Lakers to a championship in the 60s, helped build the Showtime Lakers, and was a main component behind the Kobe and Shaq Lakers. West saw the potential in the roster and decided to help out as a consultant. Now with the NBA sage known as West hired, Mark Jackson was selected to be the head coach of the Warriors on June 6th. He ended up being a decent coach that would help Golden State evolve to where it is now. Anyway, the fact that they had the 11th pick didn't really matter for the Warriors. They only had one real player in mind. Klay Alexander-Thompson was a junior shooting guard coming out of Washington State, averaging roughly 22 a game and shooting about 40% from the 3. The Warriors were aiming for mainly positionless players, and Thompson fit the bill. Standing at 6'7" with a 6'9" wingspan, Klay was touted as a shooter as soon as he came out the draft. Surprisingly, he wasn't that great of a defender, or even good. He wasn't that good at the time, but the front office had faith that Mark Jackson could at least hone him to become a decent defensive player.
Offensive rebounds to this great offensive team. Kevin Love's got to do better. Klay Thompson on Kyrie Irving.
So yeah, the Warriors got pretty lucky on that one. Moving along, drafting a shooting guard instituted a bit of controversy among the Golden State fans. Despite the fact that Monte was the leading scorer, the trade rumors had started to float about now the Warriors had drafted another 2-man. Monte's agents and the Warriors front office had been exploring possible trades before this, and this meant that the tension was mounting. Time was running out for Warrior Monte Ellis.